Hi, I'm Charles Wookey, the CEO of a charity, A Blueprint for Better Business, and I'd just like to offer some thoughts on leadership of a purpose-led business. When I think about leadership, I think about my own career and my own life and the leaders that I've met and worked with. And there's one in particular who I had the privilege to work for a number of years, quite closely. And when I think about him, there are three things that really strike me about the way in which he approached life. The first is that he had an incredible capacity to listen to people. And I was with him sometimes when I knew he had a huge amount on in his mind, with a lot of stress and a lot of difficult issues to tackle. But someone would come to see him, and he would attend to that person as if he didn't have another care in the world. And he had this great ability to be present and to genuinely listen. And I think of him as having had if you like, an open heart and not a closed mind. He was somebody who was willing to learn, who knew what he believed. He was strong in his beliefs, but he was always open and willing to listen and to engage in genuine dialogue. And it seems to me that in a way that is the characteristic that is most important in the leadership of a purpose-led organisation, which sees itself as first and foremost a human system, a set of human relationships, where what we're trying to do is to create value and to create goods that actually none of us can create by ourselves, and that arise both in human and in terms of products and services through the quality of the relationships that we create. For us, a purpose-led business has two core elements. One is a purpose, a reason for being, which is not simply making money. That's important, but it's an outcome. A purpose-led business is one that's really clear about the social and environmental benefits that arise from its success. And it sees itself as contributing positively to society by, if you like, profitably solving the problems of people and planet and not contributing to those problems. So it has a reason for being beyond simply making money. And it sees itself as a system within a wider human system characterized by relationships of respect and dignity with all of those the business interacts with. The second thing that characterizes a purpose-led business is the way in which the business thinks about people and what motivates them. Often in life, people found businesses and think about people as being motivated simply by self-interest and money, status and power. A purpose-led business is one that has a different assumption about business and about people. And it's one that thinks of people as being motivated by their capacity to contribute to something worthwhile, beyond simply self-interest. Self-interest is important, it's not a negative thing, but actually in the right environments we can all be stretched to act beyond simply thinking about ourselves and money, status and power to what can contribute to a broader venture. And the key thing here is that leaders have a choice about what they appeal to in other people. Do they appeal to their capacity and their desire to contribute and to make a positive difference? Or do they simply appeal to their fear, to their selfishness, and to what's in each of us as well, which is just what's just about ourselves? So that's the choice that leaders can make in organizations, and indeed in politics as well, about what they appeal to in people. And a lot of what we get within businesses and indeed in society is as a result of the ways those choices are exercised by leaders in all walks of life. So in terms of business, what do I think this really means in terms of a purpose-led leader? What do they look like? What would one expect? The first, I think, is care. For me, the most important characteristic of a purpose-led leader is they actually care about people. And you know whether people care about people or not. But it's a decision, actually, as well, whether or not people genuinely think and genuinely believe that people are important and that people matter. Everybody is a someone, not a something. And do we start from there or not? The second characteristic of a purpose-led leader is that they believe in the purpose of the organization. Many organizations today are getting themselves a purpose, they're putting it on the wall, and it's not always clear that it drives decision-taking and that it actually means anything. And one of the things that's really important, I believe, in the leadership of a purpose-led business is that the leaders actually believe that the purpose will generate and create a better business and a better society, and that they believe the conditions exist for the business to do that. So there is a question about the belief, real personal belief in the purpose and in what it means for that purpose to be brought to life and lived out within the way in which people behave in the organisation. A third quality, which seems to me to be important, is a degree of vulnerability. I was talking to the CEO of a large organisation who said the two behaviours he was looking for as he tried to create a more purpose-led environment were authenticity and vulnerability. I was really struck by that. It's completely different from his predecessor. And it was a fascinating way in which he was trying to elicit from people a desire to create a shared good through vulnerability. What do I mean by vulnerability? Well, let me give you one example of a CEO who defined the purpose and set some 10-year goals. And in setting those goals, he said, look, this is where I want us to go. I actually don't know how we're going to get there. There are some of these things which I simply don't know how we're going to do, but I know that's where we can go. I believe that together we can do it, but I'm saying I don't have a complete plan. I need your help. And a really interesting thing is that when he did that, what it did was to spur people and motivate people to commit to help. So the exhibition of vulnerability, of somebody not just saying, I know all the answers, follow me, but here's the story, and I think we can create something together if we all commit. That's a brilliantly powerful and enabling way of people coming together around a shared endeavour. There's also a question of what you appeal to in terms of the relationships that you have with those who work with you and for you. One way I think about this is that you can imagine a leader having a mirror and a door in their office. And a purpose-led leader, when something goes really well, goes straight out the door. And they find who to thank and who to congratulate and who to celebrate with. And when something goes badly, the first thing they do is they go to the mirror. And they look at themselves and say, well, what could I have done differently to help stop that happening? And maybe the opposite of a purpose-led leader is somebody who, when something goes well, goes straight to the mirror. And when something goes badly, goes straight out the door to find who to blame. So that's a choice too, about what it is that we decide to appeal to in ourselves, and what we're actually in service of in our leadership roles. There are lots of leadership styles, but these are choices that everybody can make about how they decide to show up as leaders in an organisation. Other things that seem to me to matter a lot are resilience. I've got a golden retriever. I go running with Tess. And for me, it's a brilliant way of rejuvenating and of having time for myself outside work to try and get that energy back. Another thing is to recognise the limits and the dangers of tactical work. We all have blizzards of emails these days, and sometimes I think the way in which we're all tempted to respond is by almost like driving in the rain. There's all this bird shit coming on the window screen, and we just wipe it off and do the next one and get rid of that and get rid of that. So we just get stuff off our desk all the time and leave it to somebody else. And actually really good leaders have a way of dealing with things where they're able to avoid doing that, because the risk is that you let the tactical get in the way of the important and not have the time to step back. And having time and providing time, as this leader I worked for was brilliant at, he wouldn't take if he had a big decision, he would say, I'm not deciding that today. He would go and he would spend 2 or 3 days thinking about it, and then he would come back and say, okay, I'm clear what we're going to do. He would give himself permission to have time not to take a decision quickly. He would still take one, because another risk is people simply not taking decisions, even in conditions of risk. Leaders have to decide. They have to have courage of decisiveness. But sometimes it's really wise not to feel a rush into taking a decision. A final thing for me around leadership of a purpose-led business is gratitude. Because I think everybody gets paid for work, but what makes an enormous difference if people are thanked and if people feel in a non-monetary way that their presence and their contribution is genuinely appreciated. And it's amazing. It's like watering a plant. It doesn't take much energy, but it's extraordinary what it produces in terms of people's feeling of contributing and the way in which they can grow as people through that. Very simple thing. One CEO, I remember saying 3 things about leadership: define reality, get out the way, and say thank you. And that, in a way, that feels to me like a really good summary of the kind of attributes one's looking for in the leader of a purpose-led business who recognises the potential of others together to achieve what the organisation needs to achieve, and the freedom, giving those people the freedom to do it. And if you do that, there's a great one-liner I got from one of the CEOs we worked with around what you end up with. And he said what you end up with and what you want to end up with is people feeling that they are a valued member of a winning team on a worthwhile mission. And if we can get there, that really is purpose-led business in practice.